They didn't even hold off till the attorney finished speaking. She won't receive anything. Dad detested her. My sister Karen stated as much. As soon as I entered the room, no salutations. Avoid making eye contact. Just that scathing, piercing statement. Loud enough to be heard by all, as if she intended it to reverberate. The words struck me like a blow to the chest. My hold on my son. Warm and shaking, Eli's little fingers wrapped back around mine as his grasp tightened. Thin and unsteady, I forced a grin down at him. However, he was aware. He was constantly aware. Not that I had sat down yet. However, the message was unambiguous. I wasn't invited, I wasn't related. Simply put, I was a loose end. To snip clean was their purpose. With her black hair scraped into the tight ponytail she usually wore when she wanted to appear superior, Karen sat at the head of the table poised in a gray pantsuit. She had a bright red lipstick. Traditional. Karen was painted for a fight I was unaware I had entered. The voice I feared even more than appeared. Rick, my uncle. Dad's oldest brother chuckled dryly. With his fingers interlaced behind his head, he reclined on his chair. His self-satisfied grin spreads across his face like grease. Rick said, pointing to Eli as if he were not even human, "Even her child knows she's worthless." Eli dropped his gaze to the ground. Around the room, my heart broke a bit more. A few people nodded their heads. I hadn't seen my cousins, former neighbors, relatives, or acquaintances in a long time. I wasn't on the side of those who had long before chosen a side. I took a deep breath. It was like sandpaper in my throat. The scent of leather seats dust and whatever extremely sweet perfume Karen had been wearing filled the air. My ears were able to detect my pulse. Hot and loud. Embarrassing. I walked Eli away from the pack to the farthest chair at the end of the long mahogany table. When I sat down, the chair creaked. With his legs hanging over the floor, Eli crawled up next to me. He appeared to be attempting to blend into thin air as his hands folded in his lap. Karen gently moved her head in my direction, and as our gazes locked, she gave me a cold grin. Just poisoned sympathy. You are aware of the futility of this. Karen, my sister, spoke in a cool, silky voice. Dad revised the will and excluded you entirely. Told him you were dead. I didn't answer. I was unable to. My mouth felt heavy with my tongue. Useless. I gave a little nod as if I understood, but on the inside. What made me come at all, I assumed that there may be a sign, a line, or a remark. He recalled me. Something to bring everything together. Rather, I found myself back where I had vowed never to go again. People all around me made it obvious that they had buried me long before they buried him. And before I could get up to go, they began vulture-like chopping up the estate. The door opened with a squeak. My father's attorney, Mr. Connors, came into the room with a heavy folder under his arm. His face was unrevealing. His eyes were sleepy, and his face was perfectly pressed. There was silence in the room. Everyone straightened their posture a bit. It was this. I prepared myself for embarrassment. I had no expectations before I arrived, and I would depart with just that. Or so I believed. For what reason, nobody knew in that room. Not Rick, not Karen, not even myself. Was my son there? There was something Eli had brought, and he would disprove all they believed they understood in a single statement. He filmed a video, but you forgot it. I hadn't been in a space like this with my family in 8 years. I packed up a life they thought I didn't deserve 8 years ago. Without turning around, he took Eli only 2 at a time and walked away. I had to do it not because I wanted to. Because there was never a word spoken to my father, Charles, or yelling. Because every family get-together was like smiling for the camera while barefooting over glass. However, I had returned. Back in a room that still had the odor of ancient rage and cigar smoke. The irony, I had no idea that I had been asked to the will. 3 days after the funeral, the envelope was read. Just the date and time, no notes. Connor's formal script for an address. I briefly pondered whether it was an error. Perhaps it was intended for Karen, or perhaps it was merely a cruel farewell joke. However, Eli desired to leave. His soft, wide eyes were fixed on me. He spoke in a quiet but confident tone. He said, "Mom, we should go. Perhaps you need to hear something." I'm not sure how a 10-year-old can possess such wisdom, but he does. There are moments when I believe he sees the world in ways that most adults never do. So we arrived. He wore a small button-up shirt that he had chosen himself, and I wore the simple black dress that I hadn't worn since my mother's funeral. I braided his hair that morning with trembling hands, and he told me I looked beautiful. He didn't know I had barely slept, that I was terrified to face the people who'd treated me like a ghost. For nearly a decade, I knew what they thought of me. Karen, the perfect daughter. She stayed, she helped, she took care of Dad. She made sure everyone saw her doing it too. She told the story so many times it became gospel. Julia abandoned the family. Julia couldn't handle real life. Julia ran away. They never asked why I left. They didn't know or didn't care. The dad stopped speaking to me after I refused to stay in a marriage that was tearing me apart. That when I showed up on his porch with Eli in a suitcase, he shut the door without saying a word. That the one person who was supposed to protect me from the world had become another wall. I had to break through. Uncle Rick didn't help. He was Dad's echo, always repeating the same bitter phrases. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Karen. She soaked it all up and turned it into a script she could weaponize. So I stopped trying. I built a quiet life for Eli and me. We didn't have much, but we had peace and love and laughter. Still, part of me held on to the smallest, most fragile hope that maybe in the end Dad had seen something, regretted something, left something behind. Maybe that's why I opened the envelope, why I showed up. But now, sitting in that room, surrounded by hard eyes and smug smiles, I felt foolish for hoping Eli hadn't said a word since we sat down. He sat straight, hands in his lap, eyes scanning the room like he was studying each face. His calm unnerved me a little, like he was waiting for something. And then Mr. Connors cleared his throat and opened the folder. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, "Just get through this. Don't let them see you break." But Eli, he was sitting on something bigger than grief. And before this was over, he'd prove he was the only one in the room truly listening to my father. Mr. Connors cleared his throat again, the way lawyers do when they want the room's attention without actually asking for it. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the folder, and began reading the will like it was just another Tuesday. I barely heard the first few lines. Generic legal stuff. Estate definitions, executor declarations. My mind was spinning, not with what he was saying, but with what I knew was coming. He wouldn't say my name. I was sure of it. Still, every time he paused to turn a page, I held my breath, like maybe, just maybe, the next words would be different. Maybe he'd surprise me. But now it was all the usual suspects to my daughter Karen. I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Karen's face didn't move, but I could feel her satisfaction, like perfume wafting across the table. She glanced sideways at her husband Neil, who gave her a smug little nod like they were already planning renovations. To my brother Rick, the lake property, and all remaining shares in the family business. With his arms crossed and his chin up like a king looking over his new realm, Rick reclined even more in his chair. I saw him gently bite down on the cigar after sliding it back between his teeth as if he had already won something from my nephew Paul. The collection of vintage cars. When I was 9 years old, Paul, my cousin locked me out of my own room just to see me cry. I bit the inside of my cheek to prevent my face from breaking Paul. Tears were hot and stinging as they gathered behind my eyes. I didn't let them fall, though. I have yet to be mentioned. No footnote at all. The line I had been dreading then appeared. As previously stated, a portion of this estate will not be given to my daughter Julia. It was there. Easy, final, similar to a door that closes. It was as if someone had punched me in the chest. Beneath the table, Eli's fingers found mine. My hands were clenched in my lap, but I was completely unaware of it. Before I drifted too far, his touch anchored me and brought me back. Behind my eyes, I could feel my heartbeat. It burned my skin. The whispers followed, low but deliberate. The softest scarf was released by Karen. "Told you," she spoke softly to Neil. Uncle Rick shook his head as if everything had been expected. To leave her own father is a sign of a certain type of person. He spoke more loudly than he had to. Little was said by the others, the cousins, or the so-called family friends. They were equally silent. I gazed down at the table's wood grain. The spiraling and twisting lines were almost mesmerizing. Compared to their faces, that was easier to look at. Inside my head, I could hear the hollow, flat sound of my own voice. What brought me here? What made me believe he would remember me? Then Eli shifted. He sat up straighter and released my hand. Before I could see the change, I could feel it. Like a tiny blade, his voice sliced through the tension. Unshakable, but soft. "He filmed a video, but you forgot it." The room went cold. Karen blinked. Rick pivoted. Mr. Connors hesitated. The pen remains above the page. I looked over at Eli. My mind is flooded with confusion. Which video? Eli wasn't looking at me when I asked, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. He was staring straight ahead. Steady, sure. A tiny white envelope, slightly crumpled but tightly sealed, came out of his backpack. Dad's handwriting for the lawyer was underneath my name, which was on the front. Only if things become ugly. Eli had figured it out before me. Then, for the first time in the day, I sensed a change in the room's equilibrium. As if it were radioactive, I gazed at the envelope in my son Eli's hands. So calmly, he held it, like it wasn't the most dangerous object in the room. But my eyes were locked on the handwriting across the front, sharp all caps. Unmistakable. My father's for the lawyer. Only if things become ugly. Well, it had gotten ugly. I could barely find my voice. "Eli, where did you get that?" He looked up at me, his expression soft but steady. "Grandpa gave it to me a while ago. He told me to keep it safe." My heart stuttered. He gave it to you," he nodded. "The day we visited him. Just me and him." "You were at work?" I blinked hard, trying to pull memory into focus. I remembered that day Eli had asked if he could go with my neighbor to drop off something at Dad's. It was the first time I'd let him go without me. I had no idea they even spoke. Now Mr. Connors reached across the table. "May I?" he asked gently, and Eli handed the envelope over without hesitation. The entire room leaned in. Karen was squinting like she couldn't make sense of it. Rick shifted in his seat, no longer slouched. For once, nobody had anything to say. The envelope made a quiet tearing sound as Connors opened it. Inside was a USB drive. Small, black, ordinary, but my pulse kicked like it was a grenade. Connors furrowed his brow and pulled a note from the envelope to another page in my father's handwriting. His eyes scanned it, and for the first time since he walked into the room, his composure cracked just slightly. But I saw it. He didn't speak right away. He just nodded slowly, like something unspoken had been confirmed. "Everyone," Connor said, his voice quieter now. "There is a video message from Charles Thomas recorded before the final version of this will. It was sealed with instructions to be played only if this situation became contentious." His eyes flicked to Karen, then Rick. They both shifted in their chairs. Karen scoffed. "This is ridiculous. He didn't say anything about a video." Uncle Rick leaned forward, voice harder now. "We don't know what's even on that thing. Could be fake." Connors raised a hand. "It's time-stamped. Authenticated. I recognize the handwriting and signature, and per his instructions, I'm legally bound to play it." He plugged the USB into a sleek black laptop sitting on the desk beside him. The screen flickered to life, the logo dissolving into a black frame with a single word play. The air in the room changed. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I gripped the arms of my chair like they might keep me from floating off into some other world. My breathing was shallow, shaky. Why would Dad leave a video? Why do... Eli. What could he possibly want to say now after everything? Eli didn't look nervous. He just sat still, eyes on the screen like he already knew what was coming. Karen looked pale now. Her lips were pressed into a tight line. Rick had stopped chewing his cigar. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But mostly, I wanted to know. Connors hit the spacebar. The screen went black for half a second, then flickered, and suddenly there he was, my father, older, thinner, sitting at his desk wearing that navy sweater I bought him for his last birthday. The one I didn't know he'd ever worn. His hands were folded, his expression not cold, just tired. He looked straight into the camera, and then he started to speak. I didn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up, not when I saw his face, not when I heard the first two words. Leave his mouth. Hi, Julia. He appeared older than I had recalled. He was thinner now. My father, Charles Thomas, was still seated at that weathered oak desk with the antique globe behind him, though his once proud stance had softened, like we did as children. This time, though, his face wasn't cold or aloof. It was a person. If you're watching, he added, I'm leaving. Additionally, I'm assuming that the reading went poorly. His fingers twitched as he clasped his hands in front of him. A slight nervousness. I was forced to. I didn't think you and the family would get along. I am aware of their opinions of you. Hell, I am aware of my remarks regarding you. He swallowed and looked down. I was also mistaken. My throat tightened with breath. My fingernails sunk into my chair's armrest. I couldn't take my eyes off Eli as he looked up at me. Karen told me, and I believed it. I thought Rick was real. I thought you left because you didn't give a damn. I made no inquiries. You didn't get my attention. Not once. You made an effort. In front of you, I closed the door. On Eli and you. Karen's sharp, uneasy shifting in her chair caught my attention. I kept my eyes off of her. I was unable to. Dad's voice broke. Almost. I believed pride was a prerequisite for strength, that it was betrayal to walk away. But power, strength is emerging. It's for your child's protection. You also did that. What I couldn't do, you did. His eyes were sparkling. My own vision became blurry. One day, Eli dropped by and I met him. Only the two of us. That child. When I asked him about you, he merely said, without saying much else, the safest place on earth is my mom. I put my hand to my mouth. Julia, I lost you. Now I see that. I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed, which is why I lost my daughter. However, I will not allow my final act to drive you away once more. He stared directly into the camera after clearing his throat. Steady, I therefore modified the will. The entire room let out a collective gasp. A chair made a creaking sound. Rex. Perhaps. Although I couldn't hear it, Karen muttered something. My father's voice was the only sound I could make out. Eli and you have the house to yourself. The retirement fund, the savings. You own it. And a trust for Eli's college education. I want you to have the peace I was unable to provide while I was living, even though I know it won't make up for what I broke. After a moment, he leaned in closer to the camera. And let them be angry if they are. This is something you earned. Despite everything, you continued to be a mother. I never could have done that. I got a lump in my throat. I was too big to breathe. You have my admiration. Julia, I also adore you. Did every time. I simply had no idea how to demonstrate it. Then he added softly, right before the video went black. Look after my grandson. Tell him thank you. The screen turned black. No transition, no music. Nothing but quiet. Pure still. There is holy silence all around me. Chair squeaked. I remained motionless as someone sniffed. I covered my mouth as I sat there. I felt like something I didn't even realize I was carrying had finally been lifted and tears were streaming down my cheeks after all the years of clamor, guilt, banishment, and quiet. I was heard by him. At last, he listened to me. And in the quiet that followed, no one could take that away. No one spoke when the screen went black. Not Karen, not Rick, not the cousins or the family. Friends who once smiled politely while ignoring the weight I carried. Even Mr. Connors sat still, his hand frozen above the mouse as if stopping. The video had also stopped time, and maybe in a way it had. I don't know how long I sat there. My hand was still over my mouth. My cheeks were wet, but I hadn't noticed the tears falling until I felt Eli's hand slip into mine again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at me with this small, knowing smile like he'd been waiting the whole time for the truth to finally find a voice. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head. My heart ached with something too big for words. Love's relief. Breathe. All nodded together across the room. Karen stood abruptly. Her chair screeched against the floor. She picked up her bag with shaking hands and walked out without a word. Her husband trailed behind, red in the face, mumbling something under his breath. Rick stayed seated longer, jaw-clenched, eyes fixed on nothing. When he finally stood, he looked at Connors like he wanted to argue. But even he knew there was nothing to fight. My father had spoken. His truth was now unignorable. The others followed one by one. Some couldn't meet my eyes. A few offered quiet nods. Pity or maybe respect. I couldn't tell. Soon it was just the three of us left. Connors gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. "There will be some paperwork," he said, voice softer than before, "but everything's in order." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? He gave a small smile, genuine, and left us alone in the room. The silence that followed wasn't the same kind I had grown used to. This silence was peaceful, whole, like something had finally settled into place. I looked at Eli, still holding my hand, still looking at me like I was the strongest person in the world. And perhaps I was in his eyes. However, it was he who saved me, who transports that envelope as if it were a piece of paper. Not the reality. Everything would be rewritten. We lingered a bit longer. I have no idea why. Perhaps I simply needed some breathing room. Perhaps I just wanted to sit in the one room where I felt like I belonged for the first time in a long time. In my mind, I kept hearing my father's voice. "You have my admiration." I thought I would never hear those 3 words. I needed those words more than I ever realized. I considered everything I had in my possession. Years of being erased, blamed, and kept silent. I wasn't erased now either. I was heard, seen, and recalled. I gave Eli another glance. "Thank you," I said in a whisper. He cocked his head. "For what purpose? For having more courage than I do. For clinging to something that was important," I said. He grinned. "All I wanted was for you to hear him. I had too. Not only in the film, but also in the subsequent shift in the composition that occupied the room after everyone else had departed. The problem with truth is that, when it does, it transforms everything. But it doesn't always happen when you want it to. So no, I wasn't broken when I left that room. My father's words were still reverberating in my chest as I walked out holding my son's hand. I left completely. And that quiet. At last, there was significance in that silence. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever felt like your voice wasn't important, been ignored, or been misunderstood, please share. Just be aware of this. You're not invisible. And sometimes it takes time to discover the truth. However, if you had any feelings while listening, they will surface. Kindly like this video and forward it to someone who might also benefit from hearing it. Only when you assist those in need of travel do stories like these get to them. And this is the kind of story you want if you want more genuine, unvarnished, and heartfelt tales. Remember to sign up for the channel. There's still so much to reveal. Stay strong till the next time. Be kind. and never forget that your voice counts. Story 2. I went out to eat with my family on my birthday. My reward. They played a surprise slideshow of our favorite moments after the cake. Not a single picture included me. I simply grinned. Sent one email in private while using the restroom. After 3 months, they kept phoning and pleading with me to take back what I had done. To be honest, I have no idea what I was expecting. Perhaps just a typical supper one evening where I didn't feel like I was on the verge of losing my family. I wasn't searching for a meaningful speech or a big gesture, only recognition. So yes, I did pay. Made the restaurant reservation. Selected one that had adequate room, soft lighting, and cloth napkins. Something that appeared less ostentatious and more kind. The wine list appeals to my mother. That was sufficient. RSVP the day before Garrett. Ryan sent an SMS. Can I bring someone, and then arrived by themselves. More times than I can remember, my dad joked that I was finally treating the family to a nice vacation, as if I hadn't paid for hotel rooms and airfare. However, I grinned. The rule was always that. Grin, laugh when it's appropriate. Make as little room as you can. The actual dinner was as expected. Ryan added non-existent punchlines while retelling previous tales as if they were his own. During a 10-minute speech, Garrett discussed a networking gathering when a man wearing a vest referred to him as visionary. Like they were watching their favorite repeat, my parents grinned and nodded. Without a word, I poured the wine over the bread. Dessert, a piece of cheesecake, and a candle followed. Happy birthday in a mediocre manner. I joined them in a courteous clap. We made you something, Ryan stated with a smile. Garrett took out his laptop and plugged it into the private room projector that the restaurant had installed. A small surprise, that's all. Family recollections and other things. For fun, my mother said. You'll adore it. The screen sprang to life. Grainy footage of our backyard was shown first. It was Garrett's 8th birthday. Ryan toppling a pile of paper cups. Mom chuckles. The camera is held sideways by my dad. The pictures followed. Holidays, on Christmas morning, school plays, sporadic photos of them in the bathtub as toddlers, teens during gatherings. In bars, adults are clinking their glasses. The slideshow continued to roll minute after minute. Under it, a calm music played. I watched Ed Sheeran, of course. I maintained a neutral expression. I wasn't in any of them, so I was trained, not one, not even a frame. I wasn't uncomfortably cropped or pushed to the side. I just wasn't present. No high school graduation pictures, no Halloween outfits, no hazy candids from family weddings, no group photos at Thanksgiving. Just not there. As though I had never entered the room, never existed. An old video of Ryan falling into a pool made everybody giggle. In front of a mirror, Garrett shows off his muscles. We owned a dog for 6 months. Nobody has noticed yet. The last slide then faded over a sunset on the beach with a statement in light handwriting. Family is the most important thing. They gave a clap. In fact, my mother brushed away a tear. With pleasure, Ryan leaned back. What are your thoughts? Garrett stated. Very good. Correct, I grinned. Yes, it was truly remarkable. And I got to my feet. Easy. Be calm. Give me a moment. I was not stopped. I made my way to the bathroom down the hall. Beyond the coat check, get over the cacophony, in a silent nook of the atmosphere. I locked the door after myself. After that, I pulled out my phone. I opened my email. The manuscript, which had been drafted that morning, was already there, just in case. I looked at it for a while. It wasn't because I hesitated. Because when I pushed submit, I knew precisely what would happen. I could see their faces already. The gradual disintegration, the emerging insight. Not this evening, soon, but not tomorrow, when they realized what I had done at last. It would also be too late by then. I tapped the screen with my finger. A single tap message was sent. After putting the phone back in my pocket, I adjusted my collar, checked myself in the mirror, and made my way back to the table. Garrett was in the middle of a narrative about a potentially life-altering business lunch. On his phone, Ryan was displaying a meme to my mother. My father was pouring himself more wine. I still had a heated chair. Nobody inquired about my whereabouts. Since they were unaware of what I had just done, I took up my fork and grinned. However, they would shortly. It wasn't intentional, I used to tell myself. The forgetting that is the car's missing seat. The authorization slip inside. The convention of teachers. No one arrived either. How my name was omitted from the group conversation. The request. The emails with family updates. I used to believe that being excluded may have been an accident rather than a deliberate choice, that I was quite silent. It's not an accident that people are neglected, but you can't justify being invisible for very long. It's a choice from the start. Between the adorable newborn and the picture-perfect firstborn, I was the filler child. The huge reactions went to Garrett. The parallels to Dad are flashed on the camcorder. Ryan experienced the ease, the friendliness, and the laughing. I received courteous smiles and modest nods. Not always. Back then, I stammer. Not always. Primarily when I had to speak in front of an audience or was anxious. It was typically the case in a household like mine. They would make fun of me for it first quietly, then loudly, and then in front of other people. Elliot, use your words. Already spat it out. At the dinner table, Garrett would imitate me by lingering on a word until Ryan started giggling. Yes, my parents would silence them, but not in a meaningful sense. It resembled background sounds more. An effort to appear concerned without truly caring. I became less talkative. It simplified things. There have been birthdays in the past when I forgot to blow out the candles. Ryan had already done it for me, not because I didn't want to. I created and performed a song for a 5th grade talent show. Nobody showed up. Garrett received a guitar one Christmas, I recall. I got a used sweatshirt that still smelled like cologne, and Ryan got a new phone. Garrett was a varsity athlete. Everything. Ryan was the class clown. I was the child who gave arithmetic lessons to other children. The person who lingered behind to assist the instructor with carrying boxes during family get-togethers following field trips. They usually said my name last. It's Garrett. He is the oldest of our top athletes. And here's our little comic Ryan. Elliot is that person. He has a knack with numbers. I stopped discussing what I was working on and asking people over. Ceased hoping for recognition. I had gotten over my stammer by the time I started college. No treatment, no speech coach. Just the silent pressure that no one would fix me if I didn't mend myself. I used borrowed packing tape to send the first shipment of orders, handled customer support calls at 3 a.m, and started my first company out of my dorm, because I was unable to pay for assistance. But nobody inquired about my well-being. By that time, Garrett was starting his own business in the IT sector. With banners and finger snacks, my parents hosted a launch party for him in the garden. I didn't mention anything, but Ryan shared a picture that told me. Garrett's company had trouble right away. Deadlines were missed by unreliable vendors. Too much muscle, not enough bone. He wasn't made to operate. Presentations were his forte. Even yet, everyone pretended that he was on the verge of becoming great. Around that time, my business began using actual numbers. I was just starting to get traction when I created something scalable and minimalistic. Additionally, I had constructed a supply chain that could handle increased volume. I decided as a result. I went over to Garrett and offered to send some of our supplies through his business. It wouldn't work well. In fact, it would cost us more. However, I would dismiss it as loyalty. For 5 minutes or so, he was appreciative. Then he began to treat it as though he were doing me a favor. For you, I'll keep the price constant. Do not be concerned. I'm glad I have bandwidth, dude. I said thank you with a smile. 2 years have passed since then. More technology has since subtly grown reliant on those contracts. It was detected early by my team. Inquired as to why we continued to purchase from them. I advised them to continue. Said that it had to do with relationships. They didn't exert pressure. In actuality, I was aware that Garrett's business was only surviving because of the deal. He was unaware of that. My parents were unaware of that. Ryan most definitely didn't. Nevertheless, they still viewed me as the odd man out, despite the fact that I was providing for their stability. The one who stammered. The person who, while everyone else played Mario Kart, sat by themselves at the kitchen table and worked on their schoolwork. I was still referred to as our other son during the meal. Dinner for my B-day. I saw that the same dynamic was reoccurring throughout the table. Garrett spoke as like he was in charge of entire civilizations. Ryan made jokes as if I were the slideshow and the audience. I got the slideshow. 10 minutes of well-planned erasing distilled all those years of being forgotten. They remembered me. I was never seen by them in the first place. I also sent the email while using the restroom. It was only the start. Oddly enough, nothing changed in appearance immediately following my email send. I returned to the table. As if nothing had changed, Garrett continued to speak. He told him about a man he met at a business retreat who had a gut feeling they were going to blow out into new markets. On his phone, Ryan was chuckling at a meme. My mother was snapping a grainy picture of me with her wine glass. I simply took a seat and paid attention. Allow them to continue their performance as if the backstage lights hadn't previously gone out. I got up early the following morning, prepared myself some eggs, and went for a run. It seemed typical. But there was something definitive and weighty behind that silence. It's the type of final from which you never return. A few of days went by. Nothing. Garrett then gave a call. I didn't respond. There was no message left by him. Ryan sent me a humorous text the next day about how, as I grew older, I stopped talking to people. I also didn't answer that. Then my mother's voicemail arrived. Elliot, my dear, there seems to have been a significant misunderstanding between you and your brother. I'm not sure what's going on between them. He's furious. Perhaps you could simply speak with him. A miscommunication. They called it that all the time. When a misunderstanding caused pain. Not neglect, not cruelty. A simple mix-up. Like when I was 9 years old and they dropped me off at a rest stop on a road trip. For years, Garrett made jokes about it. Ryan referred to it as my single vacation. My parents chuckled. I recall sitting by myself on the curb, waiting, not crying, and wondering if they had noticed yet. The problem with being the one they ignored was that you get better at avoiding trouble. You learn to ignore pain before it becomes apparent. So I took my usual action. Even though I remained silent, everything else began to move. I was unaware of the specifics. I knew Garrett, but not initially. I was aware of how much his identity was based on the delusion of success, how he needed people to think his business was doing well. I was also aware of the extent of my assistance. The scaffolding supporting the entire construction. The cracks were there, but they weren't immediately apparent when that scaffolding vanished. Ryan began making more frequent calls. I initially received amusing updates about Garrett's new marketing campaign as part of a casual check-in. There was a nervousness beneath the jokes, though, that I had never heard before. Then Garrett gave another call. He left a message this time. I believe there have been some wires crossed. Listen up. Although I am aware that the contract has expired, I thought we should simply extend it. Are you able to call me? Despite his best efforts to remain composed, his voice sounded a bit too tight and overly prepared. I didn't answer, though. I went to the gym instead. I ate lunch. Since I was no longer waiting, I took my time. I wasn't waiting for a moment on the outside. The moment was me. And they were unaware of that at the time. It was about a week later when my dad called Elliot. I don't know what's going on, but Garrett says you're pulling some kind of move to hurt him. That doesn't sound like you. Is everything okay? He sounded tired, not angry. Confused, as if it truly hadn't occurred to him that I had a line and that they'd long since crossed it. I didn't respond. A few days after that, a mutual friend forwarded me a message. Garrett had apparently reached out to one of my vendors trying to offer them a better deal. The friend wanted to know if this was some kind of coordinated partnership. I told him it wasn't. The truth was, Garrett was grasping, and every time he did, he exposed how much he depended on me without even realizing it. The contract hadn't just been a line item on a spreadsheet. It had been the one between his company being something he could boast about and something that was actually working, and now it wasn't. But here's the part that stung more than anything he ever said out loud. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what had upset me. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't acknowledge the slideshow or the years of being overlooked. He never asked what was in the email. So I'll tell you, it was short, cold, professional. I terminated the supply contract between my company and Garrett's effective immediately. No explanation, no drama, just a clean break from something I should have walked away from years ago. He only called when the fallout started, when the numbers dipped, when the cash flow choked. I wasn't a brother to him. I was a backup plan. And when the backup plan failed, the family did what they always did. They blamed me. It started subtly. My aunt called and said she'd heard I was going through a tough time. My uncle texted, "If you ever want to talk, we're here." Then someone I barely knew. One of Garrett's old classmates messaged me on LinkedIn with a fake sounding, "Hope you're okay." They were building a narrative. Then I was spiraling that I was unstable, that I'd sabotaged Garrett out of bitterness. It wasn't just business. It was personal. And that's when I realized I hadn't sent a business email that night. I had drawn a line in the sand quietly, cleanly, and they had chosen the wrong side. One afternoon, Ryan called 3 times in a row. When I didn't answer, he texted, "Seriously, you're going to burn the whole family down over a slideshow." And I stared at that text for a long time because the truth is, yes, I would. Not because of one slideshow, but because of every moment. Like it. Every time they laughed at my stutter, every birthday I was forgotten. Every time I was introduced as the quiet one. While Garrett and Ryan got applause for breathing, I wasn't burning the family down. I was just walking away and letting them feel the cold without me. I never raised my voice. I never sent a warning. I just stopped holding the weight they'd been piling on me for years. And once it was gone, everything started to collapse. Quietly, perfectly, exactly the way it needs to. The strange thing about repercussions is that they rarely come all at once. They flow in first as whispers, then ripples, then waves. After my mom's voicemail, there was stillness for a week. No messages, no missed calls, no awkward thinking of you. Forwards from family seeking to mediate peace. Just silent. I thought that may be it. That they'd sit in the stillness long enough to comprehend. It wasn't about revenge. That I wasn't lashing out. I just quit giving. Stopped absorbing. I stopped reducing myself to accommodate them. However, Garrett and others don't sit silently for long. Then the fear truly took hold. They did not approach me. They visited everyone else. Our Uncle Mike was the first. A brief email filled with guilt. "It's tense. All of this is probably a misunderstanding. You're going through something," Garrett says. Then a buddy of mine who used to work in the legal department of my firm called. "Hey dude, strange query. Did you really put Garrett's team in danger? People are hearing from him that you gave a warning." That's when I realized there was nothing to be fixed here. Garrett had been telling anybody who would listen that I had ruined his business out of envy and that I had pulled the contract to punish him for being more successful than I was mentally unstable. This was all an attempt to present me as the issue before anyone looked closely enough to discover the reality. Ryan, too. Ryan was ready to repeat the lies even though he didn't initiate them. He must have believed he was being faithful. Perhaps he simply didn't want to acknowledge the amount of money he had lost. The actual kicker, my folks thought so. Or perhaps they simply believed it more easily. Because none of them had to take responsibility for their treatment of me if I was the villain. One evening, a neighbor I hadn't seen in years approached me as I was making my way home. "Elliot, hello. I was informed about the family issue. I hope all is well with you. You'd been having trouble according to your mother. Having trouble." It was a smack of a word. Not that it wasn't true. Because it was being weaponized. Everyone struggled. twisted into a tale in which I was the one who had blown everything up, the one who was unstable, and the one who was furious. I didn't stand up for myself, simply nodded. Grinning, I continued. After that, though, I felt a change since they weren't only lying. Just as in that slideshow, they were attempting to obliterate me once more, in the same manner as before. But I wasn't going to go away in silence this time. I didn't openly criticize them. I didn't make any noteworthy posts. I stopped being cautious, but I didn't have a news conference. I was questioned why my organization abandoned additional technology by a mutual acquaintance. I was honest. Just the truth, no rumors, no resentment. Our deal was no longer advantageous to us. It wasn't a business choice, it was a loyalty decision. Only when it is reciprocated can loyalty function. I spoke in a cool, collected manner and stopped there. The truth tends to come out. When a former employee of Garrett's, whom I had never met, commented on LinkedIn that he had seen the data and that more technology had been supported by a single contract, the falsehoods began to fall apart. Everyone knew that Elliot wasn't the one who destroyed the firm. Ego was the cause. It spread from there. Garrett's calls were no longer answered by friends or family. Investors pulled out. In a lengthy email, one of Ryan's former college friends concluded, "You can't build your house on someone else's foundation and then act surprised when it sinks." For a long time, my parents remained silent. I then received a letter, an actual, tangible letter, the handwriting of my father. Would it be possible for us to meet? Said that chaos had set in. Stated that he want to make things clear. After reading it twice, I ripped it in two and threw it in the garbage. Because that wasn't an apology, not even in their darkest hour. Damage control was the goal. The problem with being the forgotten kid is that you learn to exist without approval as a youngster. And when you stop requiring it, you realize how many people just liked the version of you that required silence or rescue. The last fallout arrived in fragments. Ryan's vehicle was sold. Garrett returned to my parents' house. The family's investment fund ended up being a complicated jumble of overpromised promises and obligations. In the hopes that Garrett's business would be their ticket to retirement, other extended family members had also made investments. They were furious. People began to inquire. Why did Elliot not assist by loyalty? What did he mean? Only functions when it is reciprocal. And after a while, the solution came to itself. A person learned about the slide presentation. Ashley, a cousin, had attended the meal. Months later, she recalled and requested to see it again, even though she hadn't noticed at the time. With pride, Garrett sent it to her. He was still too conceited to acknowledge his mistake. Ashley saw it. Then she gave me a call. I only wanted to apologize. It wasn't until I rewatched it and saw that you weren't in it that I comprehended what they had done. She hesitated. They now want to pretend that you were the one who ignored them. More important than anything else, that moment demonstrated that I wasn't insane and that the erasure was real, that it was named by someone else who saw it. I gave her a sincere thank you and let things work themselves out. I didn't make a statement, never created a commotion. However, word spread. The company failed. The word got out. The lies were exposed. And when my phone last rang, my mother's name was displayed on the screen. By that point, I had run out of things to say, so I didn't respond. After years of acting as though I didn't exist, they were now living in a story about me. Without them, I had written. That was the end of it. Not with a struggle, not with resolution. Where their voices had been, there was only a long, resonant silence. I occasionally ponder whether the slideshow is ever played again, if they ever notice the space where I ought to be, and at last realize the price of that silence. I don't have to know, though. I've moved on already. Do you believe I went far enough or too far? If you would like to see more stories like this one, please let me know in the comments. Remember to subscribe. Story 3 asked if I may spend a few days with my folks. Yes, they responded, if you pay rent and sleep on the floor with the dogs. It was amusing to my sister. She is a free resident there. I then emailed her a video. Who do you think is sobbing now? It had been years since my last visit. Not after I walked out with a falsehood in my name and a rubbish bag. But then Mom texted, "Naturally, just bring a blanket, honey." I hoped that things would be different this time. It wasn't. The home had the same appearance, faded photographs and beige walls. Like shame, that strange lemon pine scent clung to everything. Mom grinned broadly as she opened the door. "You succeeded," as if I had stopped over to deliver pastries. She didn't inquire about my well-being, refused to take my luggage, simply rotated and moved. I went past the stairs leading to the upper floor where Inez resided like a king or queen. Her giggle reverberated in her and her husband's ears. The second story was theirs. Everything. Me. I followed Mom to the rear of the home, beyond the washing, beyond the side door that drafts. She came to a room I hadn't seen in a long time. As if revealing an opulent apartment, she unlocked it. Here we are. The mudroom was the location. A sleeping bag was on the floor wrapped up. One cushion on either side. The rug has already been claimed by the family dog Buster. Brightly, she remarked, "You'll be in here." Buster is not a biter. I blinked. "Are you serious? Like a hostage negotiator?" She continued. "You have your own space." Dad then poked his head in with a cup in his hand. £60 per night. The family discount is for that. I gazed at him. "For sleeping on the floor, you're charging me only for a few of nights." He gave a shrug. "Do we all help out here?" Yes, with the exception of Amos, who hadn't contributed since 2009, from footsteps upstairs. Then, looking beautiful in her full gym attire, Inez emerged at the top of the steps. After giving me a quick glance as I was standing in the dimly lit room, she burst out laughing. "God, oh God," she smiled. "Are you pairing her with the canine? She has plenty of space. Buster enjoys company according to Mom," Dad also said, nearly glowing. Inez peered over the banister. "It's gold. Do you recall the time you pretended to be a veterinarian, complete circle?" I didn't chuckle. "Can you check your phone?" I said, reaching into my pocket. She blinked. "But I just sent you something." Rolling her eyes, she seemed to be anticipating a wry meme. She tapped once and then twice before coming to a halt. The change was immediate. She looked exhausted. In 2 seconds, her smugness turned to silence. "What is this?" Her voice was flat as she asked. Mom scowled. My dear Inez remained silent. She took a small step back and gazed at the screen as if it were fangs. "You're crazy." She spoke softly to me. "You're quite ill." Dad took over. "What did she send you?" Inez gripped her phone tightly as if it were about to blow up. She had trembling hands. Mom grabbed it. "Let me check." "No." Inez yanked it back with a snap. Behind her, her husband had emerged. Frowning now. "What's happening?" I said nothing. Mom's voice became piercing. "Inez, what is it?" Inez gestured toward me, as if that would explain everything. She made the edits. "It's not real. She gave it a genuine appearance." Dad moved forward. "What was made be genuine. This is not yours to do." Inez gave a hiss. "You're crazy." I didn't need to explain, so I remained silent. "Not quite yet." There was silence in the room. Buster even ceased chewing his toy. "Inez," finally, I said in a steady voice. "Should I tell them, or do you want to?" He surveyed her husband. "Our parents." "Me." "Everyone is looking, awaiting." She didn't respond. Not quite yet. And since I was standing in a dimly lit room next to a mop bucket that had a £60 nightly rate and she was going to lose everything, but that I refrained from pressing. And that was only the start. As they say, one moment can change your entire life. At one point, I thought they were exaggerating. I know better now. Mine arrived when I was 17, 2 weeks after returning from a school trip for which I had saved for 2 years. I turned down every movie night, worked part-time after school, and skipped lunches in order to go hiking in Scotland with 2 underpaid science teachers and 5 other nerds. It cost me everything, and it was the first time I had ever done something completely for myself. The necklace was gone the day I returned. Something inherited. Gold, very small. It had belonged to our great-grandmother, but it was probably not even that valuable. Or something just as dramatic. The one thing that connects us to our roots, Mom said, which just so you know was bullshit. We came from middle-class suburbia and whatever the garden center had for sale. However, it was absent. And guess who they put the blame on? Mom came into my room holding the empty jewelry box like it was a murder weapon. "Where is it?" I blinked. "Where's what? Don't play dumb," she said. "You were the only one not here. I was in the Highlands." "Exactly." Dad was behind her, arms crossed like a backup bouncer. Inna stood in the hallway chewing gum and watching like it was Netflix. She took it in, said flatly. "I didn't." I looked at her. "What, I saw you take it before your trip. I just didn't say anything." I stared at her. "You're lying. Don't call your sister a liar," Mom snapped. "I'm not lying," Inez said, suddenly emotional. "I saw her put it in her bag. I thought maybe she was just borrowing it. But now it's gone?" I laughed, actually laughed. It was the only thing that came out. "You think I stole it? I paid for that trip with my own money. I worked for 2 years. "Then why won't you tell us who you sold it to?" Dad barked because I didn't sell it. "Where's the money then?" Mom demanded. "I spent it on buses and tents and powdered soup. Did you think it was a 5-star resort?" But it didn't matter. Inez had pointed her finger, and they had already decided. 2 days later, I came home to find my backpack dumped out and my drawers ransacked. Mom said they were looking for clues. Dad said I was lucky they didn't involve the police. Then they did. They actually filed a police report. I sat in a station for 3 hours while a man with a notepad asked me how long I'd been struggling with temptation. Eventually, the charges were dropped. No proof, no pawn shop receipts, no CCTV footage of me peddling heirlooms to shady dealers. But I was still guilty, at least in their eyes. The worst part wasn't just my parents. Word spread like wildfire. Family friends stopped inviting me over. My cousins stopped texting. One of my aunts actually blocked me on Facebook. I got uninvited from a family wedding after I'd bought the dress and threw it all in as just watched. She didn't gloat, she didn't apologize, she just moved into my role like it had always been hers. I moved out the day I turned 18. Mom handed me an envelope with 20 pounds and a note that said, "We hope you find your way." No hug, no goodbye. Just silence and the sound of Venus laughing in the next room. I found a tiny room in a shared flat and got a job in retail. I ate cereal for dinner. I cried into my coat sleeve in break rooms. I had panic attacks in public bathrooms because I didn't know how to fix my life. And still, for years, I believed it had all been a mistake. That if I could just clear my name, if I could prove I hadn't taken the necklace, they'd apologize, take me back, see me. And then last winter, I saw the listing. Who's almost a joke at first. I was scrolling an online secondhand marketplace looking for cheap furniture, and there was the necklace. The exact one. Same scratch on the clasp, same dent in the corner of the pendant. I'd stared at that thing enough growing up to know it like the back of my hand. The seller used a fake name. The pictures were cropped. The listing said family piece open to offers. My hands shook as I took a screenshot. Then I called a friend. 2 weeks later, I was sitting outside a cafe on the edge of town wearing a blonde wig and pretending to read a menu. Inside, at the counter, my friend Molly was the buyer. She wore a wire. Another friend, Levi, sat nearby pretending to work on his laptop camera, in his sleeve, back a battery pack in his hoodie. I didn't want revenge. I wanted proof, and I got it in. I showed up in sunglasses and a hoodie like she was auditioning for a bad spy movie. She slid into the seat and pulled out a small box. The necklace was inside. Molly asked where it came from. Inez said it was a gift from an ex, then asked for cash. Every second was recorded. The date, the time, the audio I watched from the car, hands clenched so tight I left nail marks on my palms. After she left, we had everything. I made backup copies. I called the police, and then I waited for the right moment. So when my parents said I could stay for a few days, I said yes. I packed a bag. I walked into that house for the first time in years, and they showed me the floor with a dog 60 pounds a night. My sister laughed, and I handed her the truth. My sister's hand was still frozen, midair, clutching her phone like it had turned to ice. Her face not so smug anymore. In this, Mom said again, a little sharper this time. What is it? Inez remained silent. Her husband was now standing beside her, trying to peek over her shoulder. She turned away fast, blocking the screen like a teenager hiding text from a teacher in this. Dad's voice was firm. What's happening? She still didn't say a word. So I did. She knows, I said slowly. They all will, very soon. Mom looked at me like I'd just threatened to blow up the house. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't respond. I just stood there in my 60 a night corner next to the dog bowls and mop bucket waiting. Inez was starting to panic now. I starting around mouth opening, then closing again. Then she made a mistake. He tried to lie. She faked it. She said, lifting her head. It's not real. She made a video. It's all edited deep. Fake or I or something. Her husband frowned. What video? She's trying to ruin me. Inez snapped, turning to him. She's obsessed. That was Rich. Inez, I said quietly. Should I explain it, or would you prefer to do it yourself? Mom turned to me, thoroughly worried. Now. Anya, what is this about? What video? She understands precisely what it's about. Enough, Dad barked. Someone tell me what's happening on now. Inez was still grasping the phone like it could save her, but she was out of rope, and the stillness told everyone what her words wouldn't. Her spouse walked forward. Inez, he said gently. What did she send you? She gave a headshake. It isn't anything. Something must have clicked when he stared at her because he extended his hand. She remained still. I'll see it. Once again, he said. He yanked the phone from her hand when she didn't. Not harshly, simply said firmly, as if he had just discovered that he had been living with a stranger. He watched, listened, and gazed at the television before becoming motionless. Christ Jesus, his mother's voice broke as he murmured. What is the phone ringing? Her husband flipped it in their direction and pressed play. S's voice made the noise. Informal, assured, and X gave it to me as a present. The room died. The dog gave a low whimper. It was heard by everybody. The voice, the video, the path. It was obvious who it was, even with the hoodie and constricted camera angle. Trying to sell the jewelry is what my sister is doing. I took the jewelry that destroyed my life, she swore. The necklace for which I was expelled. I said nothing, simply stood there and let everything to soak in. Then just above a whisper, Mom whispered, Tell me that's not what I believe it to be, please. Inez's gaze shifted to the floor. I can't recall. Years have passed since then. It was, and perhaps I did take it. God, oh God. Mom said, she was pallid now. It appeared as though someone had taken the rug out from under Dad's head. You claimed to have witnessed her take it. Slowly, he said. You claimed to have personally witnessed it. Inez remained silent. Mom looked at me. Right now. Is this true? Anna. I looked her in the eyes. I had 3 people who saw me. It was captured from 2 distinct perspectives. Audio backup. By the way, I also reported it to the police. There will be a call shortly. You began to cry at that point. I was only a child. She yelled. I didn't anticipate you being expelled. You claimed to have witnessed me stealing it. You saw them destroy my life, I said. It went farther than I intended, but it did. The room fell silent once again. Mom shook her head as if she was having trouble comprehending it. No, it's not. It is not what it appears to be. It looks just like that, I said. As if someone had sucked the oxygen out of him, Dad slumped heavily onto a chair. He murmured, "We filed a complaint. We visited the cops. You accused me of stealing. You made sure I had nothing when I left this place," I said. Now mascara was running down Inez's cheeks as she sobbed. "I apologize." "All right, I was 16. I went into a panic. You were flawless all the time, and I'm not." Sharply, I replied, "Don't make this about how flawless I am. You allowed the untruth to remain unchecked. I lived in a cupboard for years and made ends meet by selling used textbooks." Her spouse gave her a look as if he had never seen her before. "Because of anything you did, you allowed her to bear the blame. I doubted anyone would take her seriously." She sobbed. It was just meant to disappear. That's when it struck me. She believed no one would take me seriously. It didn't matter, not because the falsehood was believable. Because her word would always be more important than mine in our household, even if it was trash. It was a long time before anyone spoke. Mom cleared her throat after that. It was best to handle this in private. I laughed at it. Have a private laugh. You mean the way you approached the cops in private? I informed all of my relatives in private that I was a thief. Made sure I couldn't reveal my face at a family wedding on you in private. The way isn't this. Firmly, she said. It's not, I said. But that's the only reason I was ever believed. We were still sobbing while Dad gazed at the ground. Her spouse took a step back as if the weight of everything had finally hit him. "This is unbelievable," he whispered. "The fact that you did this to your own sister is unbelievable." He gave me a glance. "I'm so sorry." I only gave a single nod. I glanced at my sister, my parents, and everyone else. Tiptoeing down the stairs was my habit. I was no longer permitted to climb. For years, I had dreamed about this moment. Though it didn't feel like triumph, I dreamed about it. Something else seems to be involved. Something more subdued. I turned to leave the entryway behind Mom. Startled, she raised her head. "I appreciate the place, but I'm going to sleep somewhere without a two-toy and a leasing cost." I went outdoors after that. No big exit. The only things that felt better were the chilly air on my cheeks and the weight of the lie. 3 days passed before I heard from any of them, nor even a phone call, nor a text. "Before the cops view the video, please remove it. Nothing but quiet." It ought to have been pleasant. It didn't. That was what I had pictured. Their faces crumbling for years, I walked out with the truth in hand. Believed it would resolve a problem. Believed that it would reverse the years of invisibility. It didn't. Because I didn't receive an apology when I did hear from them 3 days later. It was a voyage of guilt. Mom's message. "We're furious with your handling of the situation. This could have been resolved in private. There's no need to call the police." When it occurred, Inez was only a youngster. She was 16. However, I was 17. Yes, let's play that. A kid card, that's all she was. When you filed a report and had me taken to a police station, you weren't saying that. It was back then. This family isn't the place for thieves. It was your turn now. Be sensible. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded the video to the other members of the extended family. Each and every one of them. The people who no longer asked me to their birthday parties. Those who stated, "Your parents need time, but we love you." Stealing is severe, according to those who said it, and they believed that to be neutral. The response began almost quickly. "I didn't know. This is devastating. I'm so sorry. Watching this makes me ill." I received a heartfelt voicemail from a relative I hadn't spoken to in 7 years. "Thank you," I said. "You then completed the thread." My aunt sent me a text message 2 days later. She urged me to attend her Christmas party this year. "Your parents will not be there." It dawned on me then. The individuals who interrupted me weren't only expressing regret, they were picking sides. They were picking me for the first time in my life. The escalation happened quickly. Subsequently, S's spouse filed for divorce. Before a buddy emailed me a screenshot from Facebook, I had no idea about it. He unfollowed her and set his status to single. I suppose he didn't enjoy being married to someone who destroys lives for the sake of sport. I heard that Inez made an effort to justify it. Said that it was a high school error that was exaggerated. Said that I was using it to get attention. However, neither the video nor the subsequent quiet were deceptive. 3 family gatherings did not extend invitations to her. Her name and all of her platforms were banned by one of her former acquaintances. Like a warning label, it began to circulate. My parents, meantime, stepped up their efforts. The accusations were dismissed once they engaged an attorney. They added a teenage mix-up and said it was a family misunderstanding. And then, because irony seems to be very much alive and well, they expressed their hope that I would be able to forgive and move on. I didn't respond. Not immediately. For weeks, no. When I did, though, I didn't go into too much detail. It's funny that you now term it a mistake. You phoned the police when I made the same error. That question was never addressed. I believed for a long time that everything would return when my name was cleared. I had hoped to finally hear the words I had been waiting for as I entered that house. We apologize for our error. We have faith in you. However, it was not the case. They had no regrets. It caused them inconvenience. And they have no intention of fixing it now that the truth was out. I was supposed to bury it, they said. I stopped waiting for closure at that point. Because for the first time, I comprehended something that no one had ever spoken out. Despite their belief that I stole, they continued to love me. They had already made up their minds that they didn't want me, so they told the lie. They didn't want me back even when it was revealed that I wasn't guilty, because they would have to confess they were wrong if they wanted me, and they would rather lose control than lose a daughter. That's okay, though, because I'm no longer theirs. I now reside in a peaceful apartment. The bed is mine, and I'm not being charged to sleep next to a dog, therefore it's not luxurious. Last month, I received a promotion at work. I'm the glue that keeps the place going, according to my employer. When he said that, I started crying. Obviously, not in front of him. I waited till I arrived to my house. Nevertheless, someone noticed me and made no attempt to remove me. Occasionally, I receive communications from cousins and aunts in the wider family. I even believed an uncle detested me. They say things like, "You did the right thing," or "I'm proud of you." Although I don't require their approval, it's pleasant. Nina's. She still resides with her parents, continuing to play the victim, still acting as though she had nothing to do with it. It's okay. You allowed her to reside in that silent, secretive home. I used to dream of being wanted, so let her sleep in the room upstairs. I've had enough of that dream. Their family is theirs to maintain. I'm at peace at last. Not the happy conclusion I had hoped for, but the reality. It's better that way, since it's authentic. Did I transmit the video incorrectly, or did I do something that others never dared to do? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. Story 4. My mom gave me a unique gift, but I paid for the entire Thanksgiving meal. I answered nothing in response to a set of guidelines labeled, "If you want to eat with us again." On her birthday, 2 months later, I handed her a gift in the form of a foreclosure note. I did smile when I saw the box. It had my name on a tag and was wrapped in silver paper. Mom's Daniel. Cheers to Thanksgiving. We just got done with supper. I continued to clear plates while feigning indifference that I was the only one who had assisted in setting the table. I wiped my hands on a napkin and added, "You didn't have to fetch me anything." "Oh," my mother said pleasantly, "but I did." "Open it up, please." My sibling grinned. My father took a taste of his wine. I should have realized then that something was wrong. I opened the box after removing the ribbon. It was produced on glossy paper with a bold black typeface and a white binder on the cover. "The rules for Daniel have been updated if you would want to join us for dinner once again." I gazed at it. Is this a joke, like she was announcing dessert? Mom said no. We all agreed that it would be beneficial. Constructive criticism. For what purpose is it helpful? My brother leaned back with his arms behind his head and added, "I asked you to keep the peace. You know, to make next year a little less." I turned the binder over. There were partitions. First section. Talk. Limitations. Don't bring up work. Don't correct other people, even if you're correct in theory. No mocking remarks on the cuisine. It's impolite. No passive-aggressive remarks regarding money. Expectations for contributions in Section 2. Don't mention it if you decide to pay for supper. No issues about price number or visitors. Pies from the store are not permitted. Don't show up with a bad attitude. "What is this?" I whispered. My mother appeared happy as she crossed her legs. "It's just something to make you more acceptable. When you're here, Thanksgiving is usually stressful," we observed. "Nervous," I repeated. "All of it was paid for by myself." "We know," she murmured rapidly. "And you ensured that everyone was aware of it." "I accomplished it everything, so I blinked. The dish was ordered by me. I arranged the table. Even the seats were hired by me." "See," my brother smiled. "That mindset. We mean this." I let out a bitter, humorless chuckle. "You then printed me a guide explaining how to sit at your table." My mother folded her hands and murmured, "It's not an attack. It's a present." A present. I held up the binder and repeated, "You packaged a list of my failures as a present and labeled it as kind." At last, my father spoke without glancing at me. "Perhaps it would be best if you didn't go next year if you can't accept criticism." As I stood there, binder in hand, I thought back to last Thanksgiving when my mother had sobbed over the fact that she couldn't afford supper and I had had to pay for everything with about $1,000. She gave me a hug and said she was unsure of how she would manage without me. I suppose she worked it out. "It's unbelievable that you planned this. You wrapped it," I said. My brother murmured, "It's better than another pity speech about how underappreciated you feel." I replaced the binder in the box, softly closed the lid, and turned to face the people I had worked so hard to support for years. Nobody looked at me. "I'm leaving." Silently, I said. Mom scowled. "Don't be theatrical, please." "I'm not," I said. "All I'm doing is following your counsel. It appears that I will not be attending next year." She said, "Don't be like this. It was done out of love." I said, "I've seen love. It's not this." I slipped another envelope back under the table before I departed. The one I had on hand in case. The one has Daniel Wexler, the property owner, printed in the corner. They would open that one, but they haven't yet. When did they do it? They couldn't be saved by any binder. What's humorous to you? All the regulations were in that binder. My family had already attempted to fix me. It was the first time they had ever written it down. "You're overly serious all the time. It's just family," my mother used to say. "Everyone makes jokes." However, it was never a joke. Not when I had to take out a loan for an old Honda with 170,000 miles on it, and my brother, who was 19, received a brand new car from my parents. "You're the elder one," they informed me, "but not when they paid his rent at college. You ought to be steady already." I settled his bills twice. Twice. Nobody recalls that. However, they recalled the time I failed to bring a bottle of wine to Easter, as soon as that was mentioned. 3 consecutive Thanksgivings. Daniel has always been challenging. Once, when my mom believed I wasn't paying attention, she told my aunt. Sensitive, a little chilly. Chilled. When her roof collapsed in the storm 2 winters ago, I paid for it. Perhaps the worst thing, though, was how long I put up with it, because I was always there for them when they needed something. In 2020, Dad lost his job. For 5 months, I discreetly paid off their mortgage. When Kelly, my brother's wife, had surgery, they were inundated with hospital bills. Without being asked, I sent them $4,000. Nobody ever expressed gratitude. I got instead. "You are quite fortunate not to have a family of your own just yet. You can afford it." Fortunate? Yes. Now allow me to describe what lucky looked like. While I provided them money for heat, they were in a chilly flat eating tuna from a can. However, I persisted because I was afraid they would cease acting as though they loved me if I quit. Then one day, I discovered something that completely changed the image. 3 years have passed since then. I was assisting my parents with the organization of all the paperwork for their application for a refinance. My mother had inadvertently slipped behind once more. In search of the property tax forms, I unlocked a drawer in her bedroom. Rather, I discovered a big envelope with printed emails between her and my aunt that were faded inside. One of them caught my attention right away. Daniel is good with money, but that's about all. He never connected with the others. Stunted emotionally, I believe. However useful, beneficial. With that paper in my hands and my ears ringing, I sat on the floor. I was 33. The previous week, I had sent her an additional $1,200. I returned the papers to their original location. I remained silent. What could I possibly say? I began taking notes on that day. Literally. I created a Google Doc. Every Venmo, every expense. I did them every favor I could. The total reached $78 or $364.57 by the previous Thanksgiving holiday. They still handed me a binder with rules in it. I received a group text the week following that meal. Mom. Hello, my love. Would it be possible for you to place another pre-order for the Christmas ham this year? We have faith in her taste. I didn't answer. After 2 days, Mom. I also believe that we ought to discuss what transpired. You seemed to have been triggered. Brother, I wasn't attacking you. It was a joke, literally. The entire holiday had to be ruined by you. Dad. Nothing. I ignored them as usual. The voicemail followed. Daniel, all I want is for you to stop twisting things. You were supposed to benefit from that binder. We're making an effort, honey, but you must be willing to compromise. Meet you halfway. I nearly choked, laughing. You want to meet halfway. After making me pay the full bill for years. But then something happened I didn't expect. Kelly, my brother's wife, texted me. Kelly, hey, I probably shouldn't be messaging you, but I need to tell you something. I didn't respond. She texted again. Kelly, it's about the binder. I didn't know they were giving it to you like that. I thought it was just a joke between your mom and Kevin, but they printed copies. Copies. Plural. That stopped me cold. I called her copies. I said as soon as she picked up. She paused. They showed it to everyone. Daniel at Mom's birthday dinner? The one you missed last month? Kevin was reading it out loud like a roast. My stomach twisted. What your mom printed like 5 versions. She gave one to your aunt, said she could use it as a model, said you'd always been difficult, and this was the only way to make you tolerable at gatherings. I remained silent. There's more, Kelly said, her voice dropping. She asked Kevin if he thought she could legally remove you from the deed, the one you co-signed. I couldn't breathe. They're trying to screw me out of the house, I whispered. I think so, she said. And I think Kevin's in on it. That's when everything clicked. The coldness, the sudden shift, the binder, the fake sweet voice. They weren't just tired of me. They were trying to erase me. But they forgot something. The house. It wasn't just co-signed. It was fully transferred. After a messy insurance claim, the house had been refinanced under my name entirely. They never read the paperwork. They just signed because they trusted me. Because I was the good one. Beneficial. Well, now I had something useful of my own. The title. I sent it 2 weeks later. Call it a delayed birthday gift. Official certified, notarized, and mailed with 0 guilt. Intent to foreclose. Failure to compensate. Title holder for 36 plus months of missed payment. Property reclaim. Date pending. She got it 3 days later, and the silence from the group chat was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. It was my mother's birthday again. They invited me like nothing had happened, like there hadn't been a binder, like I hadn't gone radio silent for 6 weeks. I wasn't planning to go, but I did because this time I was bringing a gift of my own. Look who finally decided to show up. My brother Kevin said, opening the door with a grin that made my skin crawl. Come in, Mom called from the kitchen. Dinner's almost ready. I made lasagna your favorite. I stepped inside slowly. Same house, same smells, same energy. Fake warmth, real tension. Wine, my dad asked, already pouring. I'm good. I said, Kevin elbowed me as I passed, still mad about the binder. He grinned. No, I said that was funny. Mom poked her head out from the kitchen. See, you can take a joke, right? I said plainly. They were all faking as if I hadn't issued them a valid foreclosure notice, as if I hadn't cut off every payment for the last 2 months, as if the clock wasn't already ticking. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. They inquired about job. I didn't respond. Kevin talked about his vacation plans. I nodded, and then Mom finally said it. Daniel, we were wanting to discuss as a family. I looked up from my untouched plate approximately. She grinned uncomfortably about the home. Kevin added his voice. Yes. Did you send a letter of some sort? Legal matters. What was the purpose of that? Didn't you read it? I inquired. It appeared to be rubbish, Dad whispered. We constantly receive threats. I stated that wasn't a threat. I took out an envelope from the pocket of my coat and placed it on the table. It was really a formality. This is authentic. What is it? Without touching it? Mom inquired. Last word. The bank will get the property back from me until the loan is paid off. You have $42,000 behind. What's behind? She lost her temper. Money. I mentioned everything, mortgage, property, taxes, insurance, etc. You never paid me back. You promised to cover it. Kevin objected. I promised to assist you in transforming that into ownership. I have finally regained ownership. You're playing a bluff. That being said, I took my phone out. Click on the title of the PDF. The only proprietor Daniel Wexler filed in the county of Alameda. Enrolled on July 16, 2020. Did you sign it? You didn't read it, I said. Mom gazed at the display. No, it's not. We didn't agree on that. That's what you agreed to. Kevin got up his chair, scuffing the floor. You're crazy. I just finished. Done being your backup wallet, I said. You're done retaliating emotionally. Don't be the helpful person. Your family is us. Mom's voice cracked as she shouted. This is not how you treat your family. You mean embarrassing them over dinner and handing them a booklet full of rules? It was a joke. Kevin yelled. You really are a whiner, playing the victim all the time. Slowly, I said. I make holidays tense, you said. I should be more appreciative, you remarked. You wrote a guide on how to earn a seat at your table. You're overstating things. Mom stood up as well. No, I'm seeing it clearly now, I answered. She approached me with a faltering stride. You despised me for becoming better than you after we reared you. She jerked her hand as if to smack me. She didn't. Rather, she said, I will never forgive you, Daniel, if you carry out this plan. I gave her a direct glance. You didn't blame Kevin for spending all of my money. That's not the same, she growled. It's always been the same, I replied. Me walking ATM, he golden kid. At last, my father lost it. You're amazing. You are aware of that. You believe that having money makes you significant. You believe you are necessary to us. I gave a shrug. Did you? Now that's over it. Mom responded in a high-pitched voice. You can't evict your own parents. I'm not. I said, the bank will. Dead quiet fell. Kevin then lunged. Taking the envelope, he ripped it in two and hurled it at my chest. You've changed a lot. Don't complete that. Silently, I said. I have a complete record of this discussion. His face went cold. For my own safety, I've done the same with everything else. Are you now threatening us? Mom let out a gasp. No, I replied. I'm defending myself as I ought to have done years ago. This is something you'll regret. She let out a scream. I'm already sorry I stayed so long. I went to the door after grabbing my coat. This I'll fight, Dad snarled. You will lose. Try me, I said. I opened the door just then. I went around again. Oh, I nearly forgot. I retrieved a tiny white envelope and threw it to the ground. Kevin took it up. Now what your vehicle? I said, the lease. I ceased to report on it. By Friday, it will be repossessed. You wouldn't. He growled. I did it already. After that, I left. My phone rang 17 times the day after the birthday dinner from the catastrophe. 17. Mom, Dad Kevin, and then an unidentified number. Next was my aunt with whom I hadn't communicated since 2018. None of them were answered by me. 9:42 a.m. I got a text from my mom. Daniel, we can talk about this. Please call me. I'll forgive you if you fix it at 10:11 a.m. Your father says you're making a fool of yourself. This will only get worse if you don't stop at 11:03 a.m. Kevin's losing his car. Ellie's crying. Kelly is furious. You've broken this family. Broken no. I just finally stopped being the glue. 2 days later, I came home from work and found a man in a blazer standing on my porch. Daniel Wexler, he inquired. Yeah, I'm Mark Dawson, legal attorney for the Wexler family. I truly left my own family. Lawyered up. They'd want to negotiate, he remarked confidentially. No court filings yet. I'm not bargaining, I said. They may leave the residence or pay. That's all. They're asserting undue influence, he said, that the title transfer was manipulative. They implored me to accept the house. I lost my temper. I have the communications, the recordings, the payment locks. Mark moved uneasily. Still, they're prepared to settle peacefully. For what purpose, I inquired. A foreclosure reversal and ongoing financial assistance. Modest, they remark. I gazed at him. Tell them, I said. They are free to maintain their modesty. I'm finished. In his face, I shut the door. Kelly gave me a call that evening. Curiosity won out, and I nearly didn't respond. Daniel, she replied softly. I believe Kevin is going to make a foolish attempt. Ignorant. How he threatened to post your pay online if you didn't stop the foreclosure. Let me expose you. I blinked. TMZ, what do he think this is? I'm not sure. He's falling apart. He is constantly under pressure from his parents. He's not sleeping. He's drinking once more. Not my problem, I remarked uneasily. I simply thought you should be aware of that. I stopped. You're telling me this, but why? She paused, due to the fact that I filed for separation. I took a seat. What I am no longer able to do it. Watching them yell about money while residing in that property, observing Kevin's downward spiral. Daniel, you were correct. Everything. I was at a loss for words. The stillness was broken by her. I have nothing to ask of you. I only wanted to let you know. I see it at last. The last eviction notice was served by a sheriff a week later. 30 days to leave. I received a voice memo from Kevin. Do you believe this is the end of it? You are pitiful. Dan, Mom was damaged by you. Dad was damaged by you. I was wrecked by you. And don't come running back after they're gone and you're by yourself in that large mansion. I forwarded the mail to my lawyer, but did not respond. Just in case. Then followed the unexpected turn of events. Grandma. In a care facility, she was 86. Her survival was forgotten by half of the family. One night, she called me without warning. I heard you finally grew a spine, she added, referring to Danny. I blinked. Hello, grandmother. Do not despise me. In 2005, I forewarned you about your mother. She was correct. I recall that. She continued to speak. I have something I would like you to know. I inherited the second house from your grandpa, the Tahoe one. Yes, I am altering the will that I established. Hold on. What she responded. You're getting it. The only person who isn't false is you. I parted my lips. Nothing was revealed. She said, they've been draining me for years. You believe this nursing facility was funded by your mother? Not at all. You did. Using your funds, your generosity, you simply were unaware of it. Kevin had a Facebook meltdown that same evening. Bitter, long, and hardly comprehensible. For financial gain, some people betray their family. At night, I hope it keeps them warm. I hope they find love with their granite countertops. I hope their equity embraces them as they age. 11 people liked it. 2 came from phony accounts. A few minutes after he made my phone ring, I received a message from someone I hadn't seen in years. My cousin, Jenna Wexler, is my mother's niece. Daniel only wanted to express his pride in you. We all witnessed it. We simply had no idea how to assist. They handled you like an ATM or piece of furniture. The bridge wasn't burned by you. You were able to save yourself. I also put my phone on quiet as I slept for the first time in more than 10 years. Furthermore, I didn't wake up thinking who was in need. When I woke up, my thoughts were about power, serenity, and myself. And how you're not always born into a family. Who doesn't term it love when they give you a binder in a gift box? 3 months have passed since I left that house. 3 months have passed since my mother sobbed over lasagna and declared that I was ruining the family just before I sent her a notice of foreclosure. Bound with a ribbon. Kevin told me I would regret it, and that was 3 months ago. And what do you know? I don't. Never in my life have I felt more at ease. On the other side of town, I moved into a condo. New furnishings and spotless walls. Quiet. Apologies are not required for it. No calls requesting money are made. No group conversations demanding turkeys, pies, or apologies. No late-night guilt trips. Mornings only. Music and coffee. Inhaling. The type of silence that isn't frigid. It seems deserved. Last week, my folks moved out of the house. I didn't go. I didn't observe. I received confirmation from the bank that the property is clear. I'm going to sell it. Let someone else construct a structure there. Kevin made one final attempt. I got a voicemail from him. Man, you wrecked it all. Everything. Mom is tired of this. Dad is silent. They are unhappy. I hope all is well with you. I didn't answer. I also didn't remove it. A week after moving out, I occasionally play it again to remind myself why I'm no longer in charge. A little white envelope arrived in the mail. No address for... There was a picture inside. A picture of myself when I was 10 years old, seated at the Thanksgiving table, grinning and wearing a paper crown. It was scrawled in scratchy blue ink, fuzzy on the reverse, and everyone else was turned aside. You were never invisible. People who didn't know how to see Grandma were all around you. I sobbed for a long time while sitting on the couch with the picture. I had spent so many years accepting their image of myself not because I missed them. The one that's chilly. The challenging one. The one who needed to prove himself. I no longer have that belief. I prepared my own Thanksgiving meal last week. Only for me. Just one dish. Actual cutlery. There are no rules. I cooked pie from scratch. It was somewhat burned. I laughed. And I received a text after I sat down. Unknown figure. Ellie is this person. I got your number from Mom. I wanted to express my gratitude for all of your efforts. No one else stated that as far as I know. However, I will. I spent a lot of time looking at the screen. I then said, "You're welcome." Furthermore, never allow someone to mislead you that your value is dependent on what you provide them. A heart was sent back by her. That was it. That was sufficient. People inquire as to whether I regret it, whether I miss them, and whether I wish I had handled things differently. This is the reality. I regret not doing it sooner, because I was finally able to respect myself the minute I stopped trying to be the version of myself they could put up with. They handed me a binder with regulations in it. I handed a mirror to them. I'm also not sorry that the reflection bothered them. Story 5. My 25th birthday is here, and it seems like any other day. On my way home from work, I stopped at the grocery store to buy myself a cake. It was a simple chocolate cake with the words "Happy Birthday" inscribed in pink icing. Even though I didn't anticipate a lot of festivities, I had hoped that this year would be different. Nobody even looked up as I entered the front door. Greg, my stepfather, was lounging on the couch watching TV while Mom was in the kitchen making supper. As usual, his children Jason and Amber were riveted to their phones. Setting the cake on the kitchen counter, I declared, "I'm home." Mom looked over. "Is it a cake, Robin?" Abruptly, her eyes grew wide. "Hold on, is it your birthday today?" The familiar was sitting there forgotten, and there it was. "Yes," I stated plainly. "Today is the 25th. Greg, Amber, and Jason wandered into the kitchen. "Okay, cheers to your birthday." With that phony smile, he said, "I've become hateful. You didn't get anything from us." Gifts aren't the most essential thing, though, are they? It's focus. When I reminded them, Mom nodded as like they hadn't simply forgotten about me entirely. Nevertheless, I faked a grin and thanked them. We had a clumsy birthday tea around the table. I excused myself to take a quick shower and change out of my work clothes. I came back to find that they had eaten most of my cake, leaving me a pitiful little piece. Normal. Reminiscences came flooding back as I sat there plucking at my little slice of cake. This disdain was nothing new. For the past 7 years, that had been my reality. Because my mother married Greg when I was 18. We were both deeply affected by Dad's passing 2 years after he passed away. Within months of receiving a cancer diagnosis, he passed away. I tried to be strong for the two of us as Mom broke down. I was just 16 at the time, and I was having a hard time dealing with my loss while I watched my mother descend into despair. In fact, I felt relieved when she met Greg at work a year later. I felt satisfied when he brought back her grin. In my mind, the timeline is flawless. When they were married, I was 18, and I had already left for college in another state. I didn't realize how differently they regarded me at the time. I only went home on vacations, and when I did, I was usually hanging out with my high school pals rather than at home. Mom contacted me crying, so I moved back home after graduation. She clarified that Greg was experiencing health issues. My pay is insufficient to cover the expenses and the children, and he is no longer able to work full-time. I decided to remain since Jason was 12 and Amber was 14. I returned to my childhood bedroom after landing a respectable job at a nearby company as a marketing assistant. Every month, I handed Mom a sizable amount of my money to help with bills, food, and other costs. At first, I didn't mind. After all, they were family, and family supports one another. Dad would have preferred that. But when I turned 23, everything changed. At first, the complaint was little. "Don't you think you could help out a little more with home expenditures, Robin?" Mom would inquire. "These days, everything is becoming so costly." Every time I answered work calls in the evening, Greg would wince. "Must you speak so loudly?" After a challenging day, some of us are attempting to unwind. Amber then began to look around my room. One evening during supper, she complained, "My room is way too small. The size of Robin's chamber is doubled. It's unfair." For months, I tried to be understanding while listening to their grievances in silence. However, I lost my temper one evening after a particularly trying day at work in which I had been passed up for a promotion. As we went down to eat, Mom said, "Robin, you really need to start giving us more for expenses. This month's power bill was ridiculous. Could you also cut back on the amount of time you spend in the restroom in the mornings?" Amber also said. "You're the reason I'm usually late for school." "Yes, and you consume all of the delicious food," Jason added his voice. I felt something shatter inside. With a loud clatter, I dropped my knife and fork upon the table. "Right now, are you kidding me?" I said, raising my voice. "Every bill in this house is paid by me. In case you have all conveniently forgotten, I am the legal owner of this house. Dad's will left it to me. You are welcome to dwell at my home." The ensuing hush was deafening. My shout stunned them all, and they all gazed at me. Greg's interest in his plate suddenly grew when Mom's face turned crimson. They were aware of my correctness. I owned the house. In addition to a little bequest that I utilized to pay the property taxes when I reached 18, Dad had expressly given it to me before he passed away. The remainder of the meal was spent in awkward silence. Mom continued to give me glares, but I didn't back down or say I was sorry. My bedroom door was gently knocked on later that evening. Without waiting for my answer, Mom came in. "We must discuss what transpired during dinner," she stated in a firm tone. You ought not to have addressed us in such a manner. It was insulting and totally needless to bring up the fact that you own the house. Painful. What about the way you guys treat me like I'm just a walking ATM? Mom's eyes are watering. When confronted, she uses this method. Robin, you're being self-centered. We are related. You now have a house thanks to us. You have a house because to me, I corrected her. I live here. You see, once more, there you go. She departed with the door firmly shut behind her, saying, Your father would be so disappointed in you with that parting shot. With tears running down my cheeks, I reclined on my bed. Was I being self-centered? As usual, the uncertainty slithered in. Although my father instilled in me the importance of family, I don't believe he had any intention of my turning into a doormat. Even still, the shame that accompanied me to bed that night persisted. 2 months have passed since that discussion. Since then, there has been tension and everyone is cautious near one another. I have nothing to show for my 25th birthday other than a small piece of store-bought cake and a family that hardly acknowledges my existence. Christmas came sooner than I thought. I wanted to make the occasion memorable even though I was stressed out after my birthday incident. I meticulously chose gifts for everyone over the course of several weeks. A high-end scarf for Mom, Greg's collection of fine whiskey, Jason's newest video game, and Amber's pricey perfume. In addition, I gave Mom additional cash for the holidays. Mom said last week that we would be spending Christmas at home. Just a little family get-together. She seemed to be reminding me of my alleged selfishness by emphasizing family. I carefully wrapped every gift in the hopes that it might heal our differences. I'm a fool. The aroma of Mom's cinnamon pastries filled the home when Christmas morning dawned. It briefly reminded me of the days before Greg and his children came in and before Dad passed away, prior to me being the family's ATM. They opened my gifts, and I watched. Greg lifted his eyebrows gratefully at the whiskey, and Mom appeared quite delighted with her scarf. Even Amber managed a grudging thank you for the perfume, and Jason ripped into the game's wrapper right away. Then my mother gave me a little shoddy-wrapped box. She added, This is from all of us. There was a simple gray sweater inside still wearing its sale tag. I recognized it from Target's clearance rack where it was discounted from $24.99. I made an effort to grin. Thank you. For Christmas dinner, we sat around the dining table. With a feast, Mom had gone above and beyond, stuffing turkey mashed potatoes and 3 sides of vegetables. The formal china, which was saved for important events, was gone. Mom cleared her throat after we completed the main meal. I must make an announcement. She proudly smiled at Greg as she grabbed for his hand. Greg is back to work full-time after a full recovery. In addition to it, he was promoted. He will receive a substantial pay raise as the new regional manager. Everyone cheered and applauded. A sense of relief swept over me. At last, I could reduce the amount of money I gave them. I might be able to start saving for that European vacation. I had been having dreams about it. Mom turned to face me, her expression unreadable, and went on. It's time for some adjustments around here, we've decided. We believe it would be better if you moved out because we are no longer in need of your financial support. I almost choked. What? As if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell. Mom went on, Amber will be taking your room. She needs more room as she gets older. Amber enthusiastically clapped her hands. I've chosen fresh paint colors already, contemplating a lavender motif. I gaped at them in disbelief. Let me clarify. For the past 3 years, I have been providing for your entire home by purchasing your food and paying your expenses. And you're throwing me out now that you don't need my money. Robin, it's not like that. You are now 25? Isn't it time you got a home of your own? The majority of people your age no longer reside with their parents. The majority of people my age do not provide for their parents and step-siblings financially. Amber laughed and I shouted back. You may still purchase food and pay our bills if you'd like. We will not refuse free money. Except for me, everyone at the table laughed, Without saying another word, my cheeks burned with shame and rage. I slammed the door behind me as I headed to my room. As they continued their Christmas party downstairs, I laid in bed and listened. The floor echoed with their laughing. As I lay there, each blast like a dagger twisting in my chest. The last 3 years' worth of memories came flooding back to me like a depressing movie reel. When I couldn't afford the trip and the expenses for that month, I missed a friend's destination wedding. I declined the promotion as it would have entailed moving. Since Mom was constantly requesting a little extra, I couldn't justify getting a new car, so I continued to drive my dad's old Honda, which had 200,000 miles on it. My birthday is this month. My birthdays, my God. Birthdays that had been ignored or barely recognized over the previous 7 years suddenly came flooding back. The moment my mother brought me dish towels. Greg sent a $5 gift card to a coffee establishment that year. Amber and Jason didn't even recognize me on my birthday, too preoccupied with their own lives to pay attention. In the meantime, I recalled how extravagantly I had attended their 50th birthday celebrations for Mom. For Amber's 16th birthday, I planned a surprise celebration and bought her the watch she had been coveting for months. Last year, I made a significant contribution to the extravagant celebration that Greg and Mom organized for Jason's birthday. I gave him the game system he requested. Like a pressure cooker, the wrath grew within of me. All of them had taken advantage of me, and they were throwing me out like yesterday's garbage now that Greg got this promotion. They appear to have overlooked one important point, though. I lived here. When Dad passed away, he gave it to me. He was aware of my deep affection for this location. With the window seat in my bedroom where I used to spend hours reading and the creaking third step. He ensured that I would always have a place to call home, and now they sought to rob me of that as well. My melancholy was quickly turning into a calculating, icy rage. They were in for another surprise if they believed they could push me about. I had changed from the innocent 18-year-old who was yearning for her mother's praise and would stop at nothing to maintain harmony in the household. I sat up after wiping away my tears. It was enough. I've spent too much time being a doormat. It was time for me to assert myself. Actually, get up. Not only short-lived tantrums followed by complacency and remorse, I took out my laptop and began reading up on tenant rights, eviction procedures, and property laws. Despite the fact that we lacked a written leasing agreement, it was time for me to act like the legitimate owner of this mansion. I made my choice as midnight drew near and the noise of the festivities finally subsided. They want my departure. All right. However, they would also be leaving. I had had enough of sharing this place with people who didn't value me. The following morning, I had a clear plan and got up early. There was silence in the house. After their Christmas feast, everyone was still asleep. Dad used to store his tools in the garage, so I slipped down there after putting on some clothing. I discovered a strong wooden stake there. I went back to my room and took out a piece of thick cardboard, the sort that comes with brand new dress shirts from my closet. I carefully wrote "for sale" in large, strong letters with a red marker. I then filled a bag with necessities like clothing and toiletries. I had previously located a vacant motel in the area. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and reasonably priced for a few days as I considered my options. I sneaked out the front door, attached my improvised "for sale" sign, and drove the stake into our front grass. It was challenging because the ground was partially frozen, but I was strengthened by my will. When it was safe, I took a step back to inspect it. Seeing those words, for some reason, made my choice seem true. Without turning around, I got into my car and drove off. The majority of the guests had departed after Christmas, so the hotel was quiet. After checking in and carrying my suitcase to the room, I finally took a deep breath. I sat on the bed and reflected on what I had just done while turning on the TV for background noise. My phone blew up 3 hours later. The calls came first. Greg, Mom, and even Amber. Then came the flood of text messages. "Why is this sign on our yard, Robin?" It was Mom's first text. "Give us a call back right now," Greg demanded. Until the count hit 20, I chose to disregard them all. Missed phone calls. I then wrote a single, concise message. I own the house. I'm fed up with the way you all handle me. I made the decision to sell it and purchase a flat close to my place of employment. You ought to begin your search for a new residence. Right now, I don't want to see any of you. Mom's reaction was instantaneous. This cannot be done to us. We also call this place home. What are we meant to do? Then you are being avaricious and unkind, following everything that we have done for you. That made me chuckle out and I shut off my phone. I needed time to be free from their manipulation, guilt, and trips. There was an odd limbo during the week between Christmas and New Year's. I continued to stay at the motel, disregarding the increasing volume of missed messages and calls. I located a short-term rental apartment on January 2nd and transferred my few possessions there. The next thing I did was call a lawyer. I located property law expert Thomas Harrington and made an appointment for a consultation. After I recounted my circumstances, he remarked, "You inherited the house from your father when you were 18. Right, indeed. In addition, I utilized a little sum of money to cover my property taxes." He took notes while nodding. "And you've been making a substantial contribution to home expenditures and paying the utilities since he returned at the age of 22. Indeed, around 70% of total household expenses. Additionally, you and your mother never had a formal renting agreement. No, nothing is documented." Thomas reclined in his seat. "Legally speaking, Miss Coleman, you have a solid case. The property is all yours. Without a lease, you have been paying your utilities and taxes. In a sense, your mother and her family are visitors in your house. That I may request that they go. Of course, we can draft an eviction notice that will give them a fair amount of time to leave. In situations like these, 2 weeks is typical. We can engage the police if they don't cooperate." I felt a wave of relief. "Come on, let's do it." That day, we wrote the notice of eviction. It was a direct and official donation. Mom and Greg have only 14 days to leave the property. To make sure they couldn't say they never got it, Thomas recommended sending it via certified mail. Mom called 3 days later. I nearly didn't respond, but I felt compelled to. With a strained voice, she said, "We need to talk." I consented to meet on neutral territory, a cafe downtown. Mom and Greg were already sitting at a corner table when I got there. Mom had crimson rims around her eyes. Greg seemed uneasy. This eviction cannot be taken seriously. When I sat down, Mom said, "I mean it." With tears in her eyes, she added, "But we have nowhere to go. You can't locate a place and move in 2 weeks. Before ordering me to vacate my own home on Christmas Day, you ought to have given it some consideration." Calmly, I answered. Greg bent over. "Look, we were angry, Robin. Things were stated that weren't appropriate. You are free to return home. We will no longer even request funds for the bills." I gave a headshake. "For that it is too late. You expressed your emotions clearly." Mom broke down in tears. "You're being so mean now, following all I've done for you, including raising and taking care of you. I'll bring you before the judge. I'll sue you for all of the expenses I incurred when you were a college student." I had expected this. I've already spoken to my lawyer about it. "I'll countersue you for 7 years' worth of rent payments for residing in my home if you sue me for all of your debts. In our neighborhood, the average monthly rent is $1,800. It's more than $150,000. Tell me, please." Her face was devoid of color. Without saying another word, she snatched up her bag and hurried out. As I paid the bill and made my way to my car with Greg right behind me, I came to the realization that this was no longer about winning or losing. It was about defending myself and realizing my value. I'd let them take advantage of me for far too long, making me feel like the selfish one for setting limits. The following 2 weeks flew by. I devoted my evenings to researching local real estate valuations and house renovations while I put myself into my profession during the day. I wanted to receive the most money for the house if I ever decided to sell it. On the day of the eviction, my attorney Thomas proposed that he come to the residence with me, in case it became difficult. I concurred. "Thank you for your support." At precisely 10 in the morning, we drew up to the curb. There was a moving truck in the driveway, partially loaded with boxes and furniture. Jason, Mom Greg, and Amber were all outside loading their things. They froze when they saw my automobile. Anger solidified into a mask on Mom's face. Greg wrapped her shoulders in his arm. Jason and Amber gave me blatantly hateful looks. As we got closer, Thomas replied, "Good morning. Our goal is to make sure the eviction goes forward as mandated by law." "We are leaving," Greg replied sharply. "The legal muscle is not required. Until we find a solution, we have been renting an apartment across town on a month-to-month basis." I gave a nod. "I'll be in my car waiting. Tell me when you're finished, please." I turned to go. Mom yelled, "Your father would have wanted this right, for you to abandon your family on the streets." "Robin." I paused and turned to her. "Dad wanted me to be safe and surrounded by unconditionally loving people. The lady you become would be unrecognizable to him." She flinched. However, I took no pleasure in her suffering. For the next 3 hours, we were just sorry about what we had lost. I saw people live their lives piece by piece as I sat in my automobile. Books, clothing boxes, appliances, and furniture. Every now and again, Thomas would come to see how things were doing and make sure they weren't stealing anything from the home itself. Before Thomas and I entered the house, we waited until the moving truck and their vehicles had driven off down the street. I prepared myself for what I may discover. It was worse than I thought it would be. They had taken as much as they were legally allowed to take. Every appliance was gone. Stove and refrigerator, dishwasher, dryer, and washer. The keys were on the kitchen counter, as Greg had mentioned, and there was exposed wire where the bathroom light fixtures had been taken out. The toilet paper holders, towel racks, and shower heads had all been stolen. As Thomas noted on his clipboard, "They've stripped the place. Some of this could go too far and cause property damage." I cataloged the damage in what had been my bedroom as I went through each room. In Amber's room, they pulled out a piece of carpet. Shelving had been torn out, leaving gaps in the walls. I had admired the chandelier in the dining room since I was a youngster, but it was gone. "Would you like to take additional legal action?" Thomas inquired. "We may argue for compensation." After giving it some thought, I shook my head. "No, all I want is for this to end." I took a seat on the bottom step of the stairs after Thomas had departed. With all the furniture gone, this was the last remaining spot to sit. There was a strange hush in the house, a thick, oppressive silence. I had prevailed. In a technical sense, my home was back. How come I felt so empty then? My buddy Kayla texted me and my phone buzzed. "How was it?" "Do you want me to visit?" I answered. After half an hour, Kayla showed up with Chinese cuisine, a bottle of wine, a portable speaker, and takeaway. Spiritual first aid. After putting everything on the kitchen floor, she made the announcement. We sat cross-legged on the bare floor and ate straight from the containers. What comes next? Then, first she inquired in between modest primary repairs. I mentioned that I had previously contacted contractors to get prices for the necessary appliances, plumbing, and electrical work. After that, I'll choose to sell or stay. "What about your mother?" I let out a sigh. "I'm not sure. A part of me wishes I would never talk to her again. She misses her former self in another way." Kayla gave a nod. In an understanding manner. "You are not required to make a decision today or even this year." Soft music played in the background as we completed supper and opened the wine. I discussed my restoration ideas with them as we went through each room. New flooring and new paint. Fixtures that have been updated, making the house a home again. My house. Kayla said, "It's going to be beautiful. And yours alone." I slept on a blow-up mattress in my former bedroom that night. I slept better than I had in months, despite the pain. It's time to stop being cautious. No more feelings of guilt. I will no longer feel like an intruder in my own house. The dawn was beaming through my own curtained windows when I woke up the next morning. I sat on the window seat and used a camping kettle that Kayla had lent me to make a cup of instant coffee. As I woke up and gazed out at the neighborhood, they couldn't handle the one thing about my room. For the first time in a long time, I felt anything. I hope for myself as well as the house. I poured myself into remodeling over the following few weeks. After Miele appliances arrived, electricians fitted ceiling fans and light fixtures, and plumbers repaired the bathroom fittings. I selected the paint colors, flooring cabinet hardware samples, and other elements that would reclaim this space as my. I kept the for sale sign up on the yard to remind people that this was my decision, not because I was in a rush to sell. Right now. If I wanted to, I could sell. If I wanted to, I could remain. I made the choice alone for once. Mom made one call. I left it on voicemail at this period. Her message started Robin. She spoke in a tiny, unsure voice. "You are missed. Would you please let us talk?" I didn't answer the phone, but I did send the message. I might be prepared to reestablish that relationship at some point. Not yet, though. As spring dawned and brought fresh life to the garden that Dad had loved so much, I had to first rebuild myself. I came to the realization that I wasn't quite ready to leave this area. These walls housed far too many memories, both priceless and heartbreaking. I removed the for sale sign